There are two brachos that we make that are ordained by the Torah. Two brachos that are midoraisa. One is in our parsha, ve'achalta v'savata uveirachta, that when you eat and you're satisfied, you're satiated, you have to bench. Birchas hamazon is deoraisa. And the other one is birchas haTorah, that when we make a bracha in the morning, when we wake up ready to learn, birchas haTorah is a bracha midoraisa. And in fact, that birchas haTorah is actually derived, its biblical nature is derived from birchas hamazon. But what's really interesting to note upon reflection is that Birchas Hamazon, the bracha is at the end, and Birchas HaTorah, the biblical bracha, is recited before we begin to learn. Why is it that these two biblical brachos are said at different times? Why is the bracha for eating only at the conclusion of the meal and not at the beginning of the meal, biblically ordained? And why isn't it biblically ordained to make the bracha on the Torah after we learn and not only before we learn? The Meshech Chochmah has a really beautiful idea. Meshech Chochmah, Meir Simcha Dvinsk, explains in his Sefer Meshech Chochmah the following. There are times when spiritually there's a danger where we are vulnerable, in that what we do, our actions, may end up having a negative outcome, even though perhaps we may have intended for a positive one. When a person eats, after they complete their eating, they're satiated, that is the moment when there is concern that if you don't think and give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you may turn away. You may think, Kochi ve'otzim yadi, it's all my own. In fact, if you look in the parsha this week, it says, Pen tochal v'savata, lest you eat and you're satiated, v'ram levavecha v'shachachta. You're going to get haughty, it's going to get to your head and you're going to forget. So we legislate. The Torah legislates after you eat, the first thing you do is to bench. Birchas Hamazon. Don't forget about God. Because if you forget at this moment, at this very moment, about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you may end up forgetting completely about your relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam. And the same thing applies to learning, just in the inverse. When it comes to the study of Torah, the danger is not making the bracha after you finish learning, but it's before you start the learning. When you embark on the learning project, if we don't reflect and consider that everything we're doing now is to elevate and sanctify God's name, then that learning may end up not being learning for the sake of heaven, but learning for other purposes. In fact, the Gemara in Nedarim tells us, why is it? One of the reasons why the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Mipnei shelo berchu batorah techila. It's because they didn't make the bracha of Birchas HaTorah before learning. They just went to learn without making the bracha. What does that mean? The idea is that when you're not cognizant of what you're doing, the action that you're trying to do, what your goal is, which is to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that act which you wanted to be a holy act becomes profane. And therein lies, says the Meshech Chochmah, the reason why by Birchas HaTorah, the bracha deoraisa is before learning, whereas the bracha deoraisa after eating is at the end. Both there to prevent that nourishment, that spiritual nourishment, from becoming a poison, but they have to be set up at different times. How important it is for us to be cognizant, to be reflective of what we are doing and what our goals are, so that our holy endeavor doesn't, God forbid, turn sour. It's so important for us to pause, just to take a moment in our days before we set out to learn in the morning. When we wake up, we're saying Birchas HaTorah. What are we doing here? We're pausing to be insistent and to be deliberate that our goal is to grow in our connection to Hashem. And after we eat, we don't just run away and go on to the next thing. No, but we give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that everything that we just had and consumed was all because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. May we all merit to continue to be more deliberate and more reflective in our actions. May we take advantage of that pause to make every moment in life meaningful, so that we can continue and grow in our relationship with Hashem. Have a wonderful Shabbos.